I also want to turn to CBS News political reporter Hunter Woodall, who joins us now on the phone. Hunter, thanks for joining us. What can you tell us about what you're hearing about why Walz was picked?
Well, thanks for having me. Governor Walz is a fascinating pick in this, for this election cycle. He's somebody who, if it weren't for all the unprecedented nature of this cycle, probably wouldn't be elevated to this nature, as has been mentioned. He's not a big national name, but I will say he has built his career up bit by bit over the years. This is somebody who served 6 terms in the U.S. House, representing a sprawling district in Minnesota along the Iowa border. He is the chair of the Democratic Governors Association. So he brings an interesting approach here. And he's not the traditional pick you would usually see from a vice president when you're looking to, win a campaign. But he does have a certain approach that, seems to, I would expect, to gel well with the vice president currently, because he has built his career up bit by bit, as I said, and he obviously knows the U.S. House. He knows how to run as an executive because of his time as governor. And he has that tone that will be interesting to see this campaign season, as obviously we see Democrats try and answer to Trump and J.D. Vance on the Republican side.
And, I want to mention to our viewers that you actually, Hunter, lived in Minnesota. You know Tim Walz well. Talk about his reputation.
Sure. So I was a Washington correspondent for Minnesota Star Tribune for a few years. And I've gotten to know, the governor a little bit during that time. And I'm thinking, especially today, as we talk about, obviously, this pick, he's somebody who is incredibly comfortable with voters. I remember being with him at the Minnesota State Fair last year, and he can pivot quickly on policy. But, and he's good at talking to voters. He seems to enjoy it, too. I will note, though, he can sometimes fall into, as many politicians can, he can have gaps. He can misspeak. And sometimes, in almost a way, he is almost a little Biden-esque in how he addresses some issues. Now, the thing is, he's 60 years old. The age issue isn't there like it was, obviously, for the current President Biden. But he has that ability to want to talk to voters, to be able to talk to voters. But there is that risk sometimes of him misstating things or misspeaking that can cause those gaps that can hurt a campaign.
And what about, Hunter, his stance on some key policy issues and how that sort of aligns with Harris's stance?
Minnesota's been an interesting case, especially over these last few years, because, there is some vulnerability for, Governor Walz in this race. He was governor of Minnesota during the time where George Floyd was murdered in 2020. And then obviously Walz's response to the rioting that followed George Floyd's murder, that is often cited by Republicans in Minnesota as a major issue. And there is a vulnerability there. But Walz can also attest to having led Minnesota through that time, through the pandemic. And he has been outspoken in favor of abortion rights in Minnesota, especially after the fall of Roe v. Wade in 2022. He has helped make Minnesota, a place where, abortion is safe and reliable at a time when states around Minnesota, you think of Iowa, you think of, North Dakota, where it's been, restricted, the access is being cut back. So that he has really made his name as somebody who has answered to the moment in Democratic circles. And I think that's why you're seeing so much enthusiasm for him initially after this news broke.
And, just from a logistical perspective here, what happens to his seat while he's out on the campaign trail now?
There's not a big risk here, is my understanding. And Minnesota is currently one of those places where Democrats actually have unified control of state government. Minnesota Democrats hold the House, they hold the Senate, and they currently have the Lieutenant Governor's office as well because of the running nature of Walz running with Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. Peggy Flanagan, if Walz does end up, Harris and Walz end up winning this fall, Peggy Flanagan, I believe, will become the first Native American governor if she ends up getting elevated. So there's obviously a historic nature there as well.
And, I just want to mention as well on Face the Nation on Sunday, Hunter, the president of the United Auto Workers actually mentioned Walz's name as someone he'd like to see on the ticket. I wonder what kind of influence that may or may not have had on what happened.
And that's the interesting thing. I mean, as we still sort through what led to Walz being the pick, we're not quite sure what really tipped the scales. But this is somebody who, like I said, in a normal cycle probably wouldn't be seen as a vice presidential contender. Now, the funny thing is, Minnesota has actually, often been helped, had the vice presidential picks. You had Hubert Humphrey during Lyndon Johnson's era. You had Walter Mondale during the Jimmy Carter era. So Minnesota is known for having a certain help and being able to have, Democrats be successful running mates and vice presidents. And Walz does bring that governing, tack to this ticket. He knows Washington. He knows it from his time in the U.S. House. And his time as governor, if you're a Democrat in Minnesota, you're feeling pretty good about his time, given that, like I said, through these last few years, he's had unified control of state government. They've been able to pass through massive Democratic priorities, and he's been able to kind of relish in that success.
And, Hunter, we should mention as well, Minnesota's not a swing state. From a strategy perspective, why wouldn't Harris pick someone like Shapiro?
When you look at the map, obviously Pennsylvania has 19 electoral votes. Democrats likely have to win Pennsylvania to win this general election in November in the presidential race. But what Walz does bring is, the Midwest is not, state by state is not myopic, but there is this thing where Walz has that he is a Midwesterner through and through, and that approach transfers over state lines. He's going to be able to talk to voters in both, Minnesota, but also Michigan and Wisconsin. And that approach, I think, is going to be a good contrast to Harris, obviously, the current vice president, represented California. And now, she's picked somebody who has those Midwestern credentials that are well earned over the years by Walz, but also he's been able to display, he's from Minnesota, for the past few decades. This is somebody who was a teacher. He was a football coach. He has that approach that, can resonate with voters who maybe are tired of these famous Democratic families running cycle after cycle.
And I wonder, as someone who's covered Walz, from a pure chemistry perspective, how do you see their personalities aligning?
You're hearing this a lot already, but Walz is somebody who is viewed as very likable. He's very easy to talk to. There's a great photo of him signing a bill, I believe it was for helping, expand access to, more kids getting free school lunches. And you see a kid hugging him, after signing the bill. He builds coalitions and he builds these relationships based off who he is as a person. And I think even though Harris and Walz don't have the kind of relationship that maybe she would have had with other vice presidential contenders, they can likely get up to speed quickly because he is well liked within these Democratic circles.
And, we're already seeing some responses coming in from Trump and some other GOP officials calling this ticket, quote, the most far-left ticket in the history of our country. Is that kind of rhetoric a concern for Democrats?
It's interesting. We've heard obviously a little bit about progressives, Democratic progressives really excited, about the pick of Walz. But the thing is, when I talk about that congressional district Walz served, again, this is a sprawling district with major rural areas, major farm areas, and it has, major urban areas as well. But he obviously knew how to win over rural areas. So when you're trying to attack somebody as this, far left politician, I think that case is a bit undercut by his career, especially in Congress. And then even in Minnesota, this is a state that has major urban centers, but also huge swaths of, of rural areas and farms, like I said, across the state. And he obviously has figured out how to message in both those places.
Okay. Thanks so much, Hunter. We appreciate this.